a Wikividi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Braveheart. Braveheart is a 1995 American epic war film directed by Mel Gibson, who stars as William Wallace, a late 13th century Scottish warrior who led the Scots in the First War of Scottish Independence against King Edward I of England. The story is inspired by Blind Harry's epic poem The Actes and Deities of the Illustre and Valiant Campion William Wallace and was adapted for the screen by Randall Wallace. It grossed $210.4 million worldwide. Braveheart was nominated for 10 Academy Awards at the 68th Academy Awards and won 5: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Cinematography, Best Makeup, and Best Sound Editing. Plot: in 1280, King Edward, Longshanks, invades and conquers Scotland following the death of Alexander III of Scotland, who left no heir to the throne. Young William Wallace witnesses Longshanks' treachery, survives the deaths of his father and brother, and is taken abroad on a pilgrimage throughout Europe by his paternal uncle Argyll, where he is educated. Years later, Longshanks grants his noblemen a land and privileges in Scotland, including Premonocte. Meanwhile, a grown Wallace returns to Scotland and falls in love with his childhood friend Murron MacLenau, and the two marry in secret. Wallace rescues Murron from being raped by English soldiers, but as she fights off their second attempt, Murron is captured and publicly executed. In retribution, Wallace leads his clan to slaughter the English garrison in his hometown and send the occupying garrison at Lanark back to England. Longshanks orders his son Prince Edward to stop Wallace by any means necessary. Wallace rebels against the English, and as his legend spreads, hundreds of Scots from the surrounding clans join him. Wallace leads his army to victory at the Battle of Stirling Bridge and then destroys the city of York, killing Longshanks' nephew and sending his severed head to the king. Wallace seeks the assistance of Robert the Bruce, the son of nobleman Robert the Elder and a contender for the Scottish crown. Robert is dominated by his father, who wishes to secure the throne for his son by submitting to the English. Worried by the threat of the rebellion, Longshanks sends his son's wife Isabella of France to try to negotiate with Wallace as a distraction for the landing of another invasion force in Scotland. After meeting him in person, Isabella becomes enamored of Wallace. Warned of the coming invasion by Isabella, Wallace implores the Scottish nobility to take immediate action to counter the threat and take back the country. Leading the English army himself, Longshanks confronts the Scots at Falkirk where noblemen Lachlan and Mornay, having been bribed by Longshanks, betray Wallace, causing the Scots to lose the battle. As Wallace charges toward the departing Longshanks on horseback, he is intercepted by one of the king's lancers, who turns out to be Robert the Bruce. But filled with remorse, Bruce gets Wallace to safety before the English can capture him. Wallace kills Lachlan and Mornay for their betrayal, and wages a guerrilla war against the English for the next 7 years, assisted by Isabella, with whom he eventually has an affair. Robert sets up a meeting with Wallace in Edinburgh, but Robert's father has conspired with other nobles to capture and hand over Wallace to the English. Learning of his treachery, Robert disowns his father. Isabella exacts revenge on the now terminally ill Longshanks by telling him that his bloodline will be destroyed upon his death, as she is now pregnant with Wallace's child. In London, Wallace is brought before an English magistrate, tried for high treason, and condemned to public torture and beheading. Even whilst being hanged, drawn and quartered, Wallace refuses to submit to the king. As cries for mercy come from the watching crowd deeply moved by the Scotsman's valor, the magistrate offers him one final chance, asking him only to utter the word, "mercy," and be granted a quick death. Wallace instead shouts, "freedom," and the judge orders his death. Moments before being decapitated, Wallace sees a vision of Murron in the crowd, smiling at him. In 1314, Robert, now Scotland's king, leads a Scottish army before a ceremonial line of English troops on the fields of Bannockburn, where he is to formally accept English rule. As he begins to ride toward the English, he stops and invokes Wallace's memory, imploring his men to fight with him as they did with Wallace. Robert then leads his army into battle against the stunned English, winning the Scots their freedom. Production: Gibson's production company, Icon Productions, had difficulty raising enough money even if he were to star in the film. Warner Brothers was willing to fund the project on the condition that Gibson sign for another Lethal Weapon sequel, which he refused. Paramount Pictures only agreed to American and Canadian distribution of Braveheart after 20th Century Fox partnered for international rights. The production budget has been estimated by IMDb at $72 million. While the crew spent 6 weeks shooting on location in Scotland, the major battle scenes were shot in Ireland using members of the Irish Army Reserve as extras. To lower costs, Gibson had the same extras, up to 1,600 in some scenes, portray both armies. The reservists had been given permission to grow beards and swap their military uniforms for medieval garb. Braveheart was shot in the anamorphic format with Panavision C and E series lenses. Gibson toned down the film's battle scenes to avoid an NC-17 rating from the MPAA. The final version was rated R for brutal medieval warfare. Soundtrack. The score was composed and conducted by James Horner and performed by the London Symphony Orchestra. It is Horner's second of 3 collaborations, with Mel Gibson as director. The score has gone on to be one of the most commercially successful soundtracks of all time. It received considerable acclaim from film critics and audiences and was nominated for a number of awards, including the Academy Award, Saturn Award, BAFTA Award, and Golden Globe Award. Critical reception. Braveheart met with generally positive reviews. In his review, Roger Ebert gave the film 3.5 stars out of 4, writing, "An action epic with the spirit of the Hollywood swordplay classics and the grungy ferocity of the Road Warrior." The film's depiction of the Battle of Stirling Bridge was listed by CNN as one of the best battles in cinema history. In a 2005 poll by British film magazine Empire, Braveheart was number 1 on their list of the top 10 worst pictures to win Best Picture Oscar. Ironically, Empire magazine's readers also voted Braveheart the best film of 1995. Effect on tourism. The European premiere was on September 3, 1995 in Stirling. In 1996, the year after the film was released, the annual 3-day Braveheart Conference at Stirling Castle attracted fans of Braveheart, increasing the conference's attendance to 167,000 from 66,000 in the previous year. In the following year, research on visitors to the Stirling area indicated that 55% of the visitors had seen Braveheart. Of visitors from outside Scotland, 15% of those who saw Braveheart said it influenced their decision to visit the country. Of all visitors who saw Braveheart, 39% said the film influenced in part their decision to visit Stirling, and 19% said the film was one of the main reasons for their visit. In the same year, a tourism report said that the Braveheart effect earned Scotland $7 million to $15 million in tourist revenue, and the report led to various national organisations encouraging international film productions to take place in Scotland. The film generated huge interest in Scotland and in Scottish history, not only around the world, but also in Scotland itself. Fans came from all over the world to see the places in Scotland where William Wallace fought, also to the places in Scotland and Ireland used as locations in the film. At a Braveheart convention in 1997, held in Stirling the day after the Scottish devolution vote and attended by 200 delegates from around the world, Braveheart author Andal Wallace, or as Wallace of the Wallace clan, Scottish historian David Ross and Blaheen Fitzgerald from Ireland gave lectures on various aspects of the film. Several of the actors also attended, including James Robinson, Andrew Weir, Julie Austin and Mary Calvey. Cultural effects. Lynn Anderson, author of Braveheart, From Hollywood to Holyrood, credits the film with playing a significant role in affecting the Scottish political landscape in the mid to late 1990s. Wallace Monument. In 1997, a 12-ton sandstone statue depicting Mel Gibson as William Wallace in Braveheart was placed in the car park of the Wallace Monument near Stirling, Scotland. The statue, which was the work of Tom Church, a monumental mason from Brechin, included the word Braveheart on Wallace's shield. The installation became the cause of much controversy. One local resident stated that it was wrong to desecrate the main memorial to Wallace with a lump of crap. In 1998, someone wielding a hammer vandalized the statue's face. After repairs were made, the statue was encased in a cage every night to prevent further vandalism. This only incited more calls for the statue to be removed, as it then appeared that the Gibson/Wallace figure was imprisoned. The statue was described as among the most loathed pieces of public art in Scotland. In 2008, the statue was returned to its sculptor to make room for a new visitor centre being built at the foot of the Wallace Monument. Historical inaccuracy. Randall Wallace, who wrote the screenplay, has acknowledged Blind Harry's 15th-century epic poem The Acts and Deeds of Sir William Wallace, Knight of Elderslie, as a major inspiration for the film. In defending his script, Randall Wallace has said, "Is Blind Harry true? I don't know. I know that it spoke to my heart, and that's what matters to me, that it spoke to my heart." Blind Harry's poem is not regarded as historically accurate, and although some incidents in the film that are not historically accurate are taken from Blind Harry, there are large parts that are based neither on history nor Blind Harry. Elizabeth Ewan describes Braveheart as a film that almost totally sacrifices historical accuracy for epic adventure. The Braveheart refers in Scottish history to that of Robert the Bruce, and an attribution with William Edmonstoun Aytoun in his poem Heart of Bruce, to Sir James the Good Douglas, "Pass thee first, thou dauntless heart, as thou wert wont of yore, prior to Douglas' demise at the Battle of Teba in Andalusia." It has been described as one of the most historically inaccurate modern films. Sharon Crosser noted that the film contains numerous historical errors, beginning with the wearing of belted plaid by Wallace and his men. In that period, no Scots wore belted plaids. Moreover, when Highlanders finally did begin wearing the belted plaid, it was not in the rather bizarre style depicted in the film. She compares the inaccuracy to a film about colonial America showing the colonial men wearing 20th-century business suits, but with the jackets worn back to front instead of the right way around. In a previous essay about the film, she wrote, "The events aren't accurate. The dates aren't accurate, the characters aren't accurate, the names aren't accurate, the clothes aren't accurate. In short, just about nothing is accurate." The belted plaid was not introduced until the 16th century. Peter Tregear has referred to Wallace's farcical representation as a wild and hairy Highlander painted with woad running amok in a tartan kilt. Irish historian Sean Duffy remarked, "The Battle of Stirling Bridge could have done with a bridge." In 2009, the film was second on a list of most historically inaccurate movies in The Times. In the humorous non-fictional historiography An Utterly Impartial History of Britain, author John O'Farrell notes that Braveheart could not have been more historically inaccurate, even if a plasticine dog had been inserted in the film and the title changed to William Wallace and Gromit. In the DVD audio commentary of Braveheart, Mel Gibson acknowledges many of the historical inaccuracies, but defends his choices as director, noting that the way events were portrayed in the film was much more cinematically compelling than the historical fact or conventional mythos. Brought to you by Wikividi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?